Hi. For once, I can say that I'm feeling pretty good today. Um, my room is complete. I have just a little bit of tidying to do. The flooring isn't down, that's not going to happen till later. But I'll make a little video of a little tour of the end results because I'm just so glad it's over. I want to share it. But this video is another one about hospitalizations. I did a video about my first one. Now, there comes a point, a, a big chunk of my life between um, my late 20s to late 30s, maybe mid. For I don't. First of all, there's something wrong with how I remember time, and I often have to. I can't remember. I had serious surgeries, and I don't know when they happened. I have to look at records or ask my mom. But I have a vague timeline, and there were several. Well, there were different psychiatrists involved, um, different hospitals. So, as an adult, um, I don't remember the first time I was hospitalized, but I do know that what happened was at first it was diagnosed as bipolar 2 because I had a job and I wasn't having any at the time psychotic symptoms or anything along those lines. And my primary physician that I trusted, I don't like going to new doctors because I don't know what I'm going to run into as far as how they treat me. um, so, uh, but things were only getting worse, and she really wasn't qualified. And I was away from home at that time. I lived across the state from my where my mom lived, and so there came a point where she said where things I had not slept in 2 weeks, and I'm not exaggerating, not a wink. And every hour I was getting crazier and crazier, and I don't like that term crazy, but I'm being honest. My the things that were going on in my brain were insane, insane, and it got to a dangerous point. And so I was honest with her about what was going on, and she's like, "Okay, you're going to need to go into the hospital and get situated with a psychiatrist." Now, to be honest, I think I have only one memory of that section of time in a hospital. And that is, I remember asking, I was in a bed and I was crying. And the nurse was trying to talk to me. And I said that there is this black cloud following me, like stalking me, trying to stay on top of me and smother me. And I wasn't speaking, when she realized, first she thought I was talking metaphorically, but I was being like completely for real. Because then I asked her, I said, "Do you mean you don't see it?" Because it was that real to me. And she said, "No, there isn't an actual cloud um, hunting you down." And it got to that point because I was so it was such a mixed episode. I was so racing. Oh, to me, it felt like I was trying to get away from this cloud and just get it out from under it. And the depression part of the mixed episode was the cloud trying to take me over like permanently, and that it wasn't a psychiatric thing that will be fixed. It was something like evil that was, just like I said, hunting me down and finding me everywhere I turn. And so that's a memory I have. And when she said she couldn't see it, I felt better. But I was in and out of hospitals. I At one point I went back to where my mom lived, and I was on like a whole bunch of medication. And well, I'm a little confused about this timeline because I was not having any okay periods, and I was being tried all kinds of medications, and I was running into psychiatrists that were just adding more and more instead of trying to find the one that works. And when I tried lithium the first time, they didn't have continuous release then. It was too much, and I was like, here's a minute. Okay, so I would take the meds, and like an hour later, I was like this, holding a cup with two hands. And they were like, how can it be that bad? Because your blood levels don't even show you in a therapeutic range. And this explains why last year, once they got lithium continuous release, where it wasn't this big bolus of lithium being put into your body, it was a slower release, and I could take it at night, and the worst of the side effects happen while I'm asleep. But that's why I'm very sensitive to all medication, and I was very sensitive to lithium, and it wasn't until CR came that I was able to take it. But that also explains why last year when I had lithium toxicity, it wasn't really that high of a level, but the symptoms I was having were very serious, and I was told that it's just different for everyone, and I'm just one of those people that gets toxic before the numbers show toxicity. So anyway, that's why I had this big chunk of time where I was just so very sick, so very, very sick. It was a terrifying long period of time. I remember having a depression that lasted. This is when I went back to where my mom lived, and I was living with her, I think. I'm not really sure. I just know that I had this experience. We lived in a tiny town with a tiny hospital that had this one tiny section of a hospital ward, a few beds reserved for psychiatric patients. And this one doctor that I ended up being treated by was a total hack. Oh my God. He was pressuring me to have ECT, electroconvulsive therapy, and I was refusing. Um, and like every day, maybe twice a day, I mean, it was like the doctor and the nurses were like, you need to really, you need to have ECT. You need to have ECT. I'm like, no, I refuse. I was with it enough at that moment to be able to pop up out of serious mental. I don't like the term mental illness, psychiatric condition. I was like in the depths of it, but I could still at that point pop up and say and speak for myself. And so I was refusing it. And I had this nurse come in and she was giving me some medication. I think she was giving me medication through an IV because I can see it in my head. And the impact of what she said was just outrageous. Now we're talking about the late 90s, early 2000s. And she was trying to have a conversation with me to convince me to have ECT. And I said, again, I said, no, I won't do that. And she said, with the snottiest attitude, I can't make you want to get better. So, and I was like, I said to myself, laying there in bed, like, what a bitch. Oh my God. And that right there was like, Mom, I gotta leave here. And then, um, I did spend some time outpatient working with his colleague. And this psychiatrist, and like I said, this was a depression I had for a year, and I was in the midst of that. And pretty much all I did was cry, wail, sob, sleep. Didn't get up, didn't get dressed, didn't get showered, none of that. Didn't eat, just um and he actually got angry with me because I wasn't getting better. I mean, it was just really awful thing. It was just to it was like he dreaded every day that I came to see him. I couldn't help it. I couldn't change what was happening to me. It's like getting angry at someone who's paralyzed because they won't get up and walk. So there was that. That was, and those experiences don't make what you're going through feel any better. There's a whole. I'll hit up to the point. This is going to be short because, like I said, I was in and out between while I was in one city and then the other, and I don't remember a lot of it. And at some point after those experiences, I was. Well, I found. Oh, okay. Oh gosh, can't believe I almost forgot. So the doctor that was pushing the ECT on me, it turned out, and I found this from someone else who had a family member that was his patient, and he did the same thing to her and pressured her to get ECT and even had her sign up. And she wasn't even mentally capable of making her own decisions. She was developmentally delayed. And she like talked to her sister, who was a nurse, and yeah, I'm gonna have this procedure done tomorrow. And her sister's like, no, you're not. She found out that this doctor in this itty bitty tiny town, in this itty bitty hospital, on this itty bitty psych ward that really wasn't a psych ward, it was just a place for that area for people to go. Um, he was involved in a study pro ECT, and he pressured all of his patients to get ECT so he could get more data for this study he was involved in, or was even running, maybe. He was like Dr. Frankenstein, really. He wasn't even qualified, in my opinion, now that I know more, to be involved or conducting any studies. But that was why he was pushing everyone to get ECT. And so there, but I said no. But there did come a point where, at about a year of being profoundly depressed, I just gave in. There were no other answers, there were no other suggestions. It was, my thinking was going in the wrong direction because I wasn't getting better. you know I'd be better off something else. I was desperate, and I started seeing a psychiatrist that was in a bigger small city. It was a growing city, and so they were a little more advanced than um, the teeny tiny one I had just been in. But he wore nice suits and stuff and acted like he knew what he was talking about, but he didn't. He thought my problem was OCD. Then he had this other psychiatrist come in to meet me, and they kept asking me why I close my eyes. And you'll see it in my videos that sometimes I talk with my eyes closed. And um, if I'm depressed or in some autistic burnout, which we find out about later, um, I'm very slow to get the information from that part of my head to my mouth and speech. And they were asking me questions. I'm like in this office, okay, but I'm wearing just a hospital gown. I might have had a blanket, and they're asking me questions, and I'm like, close my eyes for a while, and then open my eyes and talk. And they asked me what was happening when I closed my eyes. Why was that? What was happening when I closed my eyes? And I realized they were getting at something. They thought I was like consulting with voices in my head or just listening to voices in my head before I spoke. But I just said nothing. I'm just thinking, trying to get the right words and stuff to come out of my mouth. It's just very slow. And we now know that when I have an extended period of time where I am sensory overload, and other autism things, I fall into burnout. And I'll have like little burnout, mini burnouts, and things will get slow, like thought process, executive functioning. I'm like, I have to stop and pull the words from my brain and spit them out of my mouth. I'm not depressed. That's just what's happening. But then they thought I was like listening to a voice or something. And they also thought the thoughts I was having were caused by OCD. And they were wrong. But his treatment was to, every time I saw the man, he added a pill. And, but I was desperate enough at one point that I agreed with him because at first I liked him, and then I just gradually started to realize that he didn't know what he was doing with me. He really had no clue. But I did agree to ECT at that time. And I'm going to leave that here because the hospitalization for the ECT is an entire video of its own. And then I'm gonna talk about the hospital where you were just put in there and babysat. And then lastly, I'm gonna talk about the hospital that was actually an effective program designed to keep you out of the hospital. And it was fabulous, and I'll tell you about it when we get there. And why it was different than the others. So I'm going to stop there. Not a very long, but like I said, the ECT hospitalization, things that go on in psychiatric hospitals sometimes are very shady. So anyway, I'll leave you with that. Bye.